Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of Stop, Look, and Listen. I'm your host, LeTroy Gardner. This week, we have a special guest. He's an author and rapper. He has a new book out titled Scars, Sins of My Mother, Faith of My Father. We got Rahman Hall, aka Prophet. Welcome to the show, Rahman.
Thank you for having me, LeTroy.
Alrighty, man. So, I know you grew up in the brick city, Newark, New Jersey. Just share a little bit about your upbringing.
I was born to two intravenous drug users. Both my mother and father was addicted to heroin. When I was born, I was addicted to heroin as well. She didn't find out she was pregnant, so she was already 3 months, and by that time, it was into my system. So I was given a prognosis of 2 weeks to live, which it's only by the grace of God that I'm before you right now. But after that, I was being raised by my grandmother and my sister in Newark, New Jersey. Um, and I had a great upbringing from them. Um, then my mother and father were in and out of jail. So my mother got out of jail at age 8, and that's when she started molesting. My father got out of jail at age 9, and he started teaching me about Islam and my connection to God. So that's why the book is Sins of My Mother, Faith of My Father, because around the same time, things was happening from two different directions. Um, so by the grace of God again, and the teachings that my father bestowed upon me, I was able to deal with what I was dealing with my mother, and never told my dad because I didn't want to cause all kind of problems for me and my brother. I mean, for my brother and my sister, who was also being raised by my aunt. I feared that they may come and take us away from her if they knew what was happening. So I had to keep it to myself.
Yeah, how did you deal with keeping, all of that, in tuck and keeping it to
It,
yourself?
you know, I just thought about one, I had to protect my family. And I didn't want child services to come in and take me and my brother and my sister, that we'd be put in foster care. So that was number one. I dealt with it through the grace of God. I mean, my father started teaching me Islam, reading the Quran. So I prayed that God would see. I prayed. I didn't think I could tell anybody without, some repercussions from that. So I just kept praying that God would get me through the situation and get me out of the situation, which He did. I finally got up enough courage to just, um, deny my mother's advances, and from there I was able to. I really just buried it at that point.
Hmm.
Once it stopped, I kind of buried it. Once she died, I really said, okay, this is something I'll take to my grave. But as I was reflecting on my life, like 10 years ago, I reflected on my life, and now I'm a successful insurance broker working in the corporate world. And I start thinking about the things that I went through to get me. And I realized that the stuff that I went through in my life, the drug addiction, the sex addiction, the alcohol addiction, those things are directly or indirectly connected to what was going on with my mother. So I said, um, I can write a book and maybe help some kids and adults who went through what I went through, and let them know they can recover. They can heal from this. You know, it doesn't define who they are because of what they went through. We all
Hmm.
have scars. That's why the book is named Scars. We all carry scars, whether it's from physical abuse, sexual abuse, drug abuse, whatever it is. But people need to know that we can heal from it. You know, we can't leave those scars as open wounds. We have to learn how to heal. Everybody heals differently. So you got to learn your way to heal to get over the scars that you carry.
Right. Um, like, talk about breaking that generational curse. Um,
Yes. This has been a subject that has been swept under the rug for so long that I felt there was a need to break that generational curse and bring it to everyone's attention. So maybe we can stop the cycle. I call it the Uncle Johnny syndrome. We all have had those relatives growing up. Uncle Johnny, I call him, and you're told by your parents to stay away from Uncle Johnny because Uncle Johnny liked touching little kids. But how can you stay away from Uncle Johnny when he's invited to every birthday party, every Christmas party, all the cookouts, all the celebrations? Uncle Johnny is there. So you try to avoid Uncle Johnny if possible. And then when you don't and something happens, you're kind of scared to go back to your parents and tell them because you don't want to hear where I told you to stay away from Uncle Johnny. When in actuality, the kids should have been more protected by these parents, and Uncle Johnny should have been in jail where he belonged, so he didn't neglect any other kids. It seems as though they condone the behavior by saying just stay away from it. So that's the generational curse that I'm trying to break. And trying to break the silence on this. Let's bring this to the forefront and stop it from happening.
Hmm. All right. So, when it came to writing Scars, Sins of My Mother, Faith of My Father, like, what was like the most difficult part to unpack? Like, I'm pretty sure you had to think about a lot of painful experiences and piecing the book together. Like, what was the biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge was actually when I got to the part of my mother molested because the visions. I went back to that little 8-year old boy and I relived those events. So that part, I mean, it took me a while I wrote all around that before I was ready to face it. Um, and then the visions that's would come back to my head. I had nightmares about it again. These are things I've had nightmares about as a kid. These nightmares came back while I was writing. So that was the most difficult part, actually, you know, thinking about this and again reliving every moment as it was happened yesterday. So that was difficult.
Hmm.
But I prayed. I God has always protected me from things and had a connection. My father named me Rahman, Rahim, Allah, Hall. That means gracious, merciful God. So he connected me, and that comes from the opening surah of the Quran, the first chapter of the Quran. Goes Bismillah Rahman Rahim, in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. So my father named me and gave me a connection to God from birth. So I've always had that connection to God and always looked to God to help me, save me, and to deliver me from whatever evil I was facing. So that's the way I got through writing this book. Just praying that I don't spiral into something else trying to write this book and I would be able to help people once the book is done.
Hmm. So, you mentioned the importance of faith. Just talk about therapy. Like, what role did therapy play in helping you unpack your past?
Yeah, I went to I did seek therapy and to be honest with you, going through this, writing for me has always been my therapy. I've been writing poetry and songs since I was 12 years old. So I was the type, if I was going through some type of trauma, I'd write it down. I kept a journal. I would write poems and songs. I got my heart broke, for instance, by a girl, I'd write a poem or song about it, get my good cry out, and I was able to release it. So my therapy has always been the written and spoken word. Um, so I did seek professional help, and at the time that I sought the help is when I was writing the book, and I was reliving this and going through the trauma. So I said, maybe I need some help to get through this. And the therapist advised me that it seems that my therapy was writing. So she told me, keep writing, you know, get, tell your story. And I also wanted to find out how I can help other people, because people heal differently. So she said, you can't clinically help people because you don't have that education. So, but by telling your story and people understanding that they can overcome and deal with it and prosper, that will help to heal them. That will help them with the therapy. So through my music, because the book tells me the soundtrack. Each chapter of my book has its own title song. So I'm telling the story through my book and the music because I'm being very raw and upfront with the music. Hopefully, some kids gravitate towards music rather than reading. So I'm hoping I can attract them and help them to heal through listening to my songs and my music as well.
Hmm. And the soundtrack includes seven tracks, seven
Correct.
chapters.
Correct.
Why was it important to merge music with your story?
I grew up in a musical household, so my love of music came from a kid. There was a baby grand piano in my living room. My aunt was an accomplished pianist, and she would throw parties. And at the time, I didn't know who the people were at the parties. I just knew them as her friends. But as I got older and realized that there was um, there was Sissy Houston in my living room, Dionne Warwick was in my living room. These were my aunt's friends. They all went to church together, and they came to her parties. So um, naturally, when I'm writing this book, there were songs that's coming to my head, and my musical side just came out. So it was important for me to connect my music, which was also healing for me as well, to the book to see if it can help others to heal as it helped me.
Hmm. What does the following quote mean to you? Medicine heals the body, music heals the soul.
That is so true in my instance because um, music for me, and I try to portray it when I in my song, it really comes from my soul. It's really deep from within. And I can express myself so well in my music. So yeah, it's I whenever now if I get into a depressed mood or something, I throw on some music. Music calms the soul. It's you always hear the phrase music calms the savage beast. Well,
Hmm.
for me, that's true. Because whenever I get in a mood, I throw my music on. It just changes my whole outlook on life, and the things that I've gone through don't seem so rough to get over. If I throw one of my songs on and listen to it. So it's very important to me in life.
Right. Explain the heal movement and how music plays a role in educating about abuse.
Well, my music, for instance, is again directly talks about me being molested, and it's expressing the events that I went through. Again, I'm being very raw in this music. I'm not sugarcoating anything. I'm telling people in my music I was born addicted to heroin. I'm telling people in my music I was molested. So I am being very expressive, and I my plan eventually is to start to open up a healing center here in Georgia where people who've been affected by some type of abuse can come and get education, they can get therapy, they can get med- medical treatment, whatever they need to help them overcome the things that they're dealing with. I want to be able to help with that. And it will be named the Hall Heal Foundation, and it would be all about healing, a healing center for everyone to be able to live.
Hmm. So, like, why do you think child abuse is still such a taboo subject, especially in communities of color?
Um, if and I've been talking to people, and some of the people I've talked to have been molested. So there are several reasons why it's swept under the rug and prevalent in the urban community. One is the person who's being molested sometimes is scared to come forward. It could have been their mother's boyfriend or her husband or, a sibling that did this. And no one wants to come forward with that. One, they don't want to be embarrassed and ridiculed and talked about. And sometimes they're not even believed. So it's been, so they really try to hide that. And I found in talking to people, if it's a a man that's been molested by another man, that's something that he may take to his grave because then his sexuality is questioned, manhood questioned. There's such a stigma put on that. Then they're not going to come forward. And when it comes to a male being molested by a female, the male may feel, oh, there's nothing wrong with that. I just had sex with her.
Mm-hmm.
But rape is rape. You know what I mean? They justify, people tend to justify things in their mind to try to cope with it, which I did. I turned to alcohol, drugs, and everything. I was blaming myself for a long time until I started writing this book and understood that it wasn't my fault. But I blamed myself is one of the reasons why I didn't come forward as well to talk about it. Oh, I should have done this and it would have happened. If I would have done this, it wouldn't have happened. That's commonplace in a mentality of someone who's being abused. So there's a lot of reasons why this is still prevalent in the urban society, but we need to open up the dialogue. And that's another thing. There's no dialogue. They're not being schooled on how to stop this from happening. And if it is happening, you have to tell somebody. You have to find somebody you can trust, a teacher, a friend, a neighbor, a relative. There's somebody in your life that you can trust and tell so you can stop this from happening. And until we address this as an issue and have some open communication, it's going to continue to be prevalent in the urban area.
Dr. Todd McLean provides periodontal and dental implant services in 2 convenient locations. They offer over a decade of experience treating patients, and appointments can even be scheduled in the evenings, weekends, or early mornings. Give them a call in Chapel Hill at 919-537-9774 or in Durham at 919-484-8338 or visit them online at gumsandimplants.org.
Do you feel like, as a community, do you feel like we're equipped to support survivors? Like whether it's the schools, the churches, family members themselves?
You know what? That is the question. That is a deep question. And that's why I want to open up some centers to help people to deal with it and adjust. Because I don't know if schools are ready to deal with the repercussions of a students coming out talking about being molested. That opens up a whole can of worms that maybe a school don't want to deal with. But I figure if I could go to organizations like the Boys and Girls Club, if I could go to churches, if I could go to community centers, and have this open dialogue, maybe I could start schools and people to talk about it. We have to start talking about it for people to understand and learn how to deal with it. So that's really that's my main focus in this book. If I could just help one child who this is happening to, or one adult who this had happened to in the past, to heal, then I feel like my book was a success. But I am trying to touch millions. I'm trying to be, I have a website that, I'm going to have everywhere. If you just need someone to talk to, someone to listen to, you can send me an email and I'll answer it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll personally answer. You got some questions for me. I'll personally answer anything that you ask me on my website.
Right. I like the fact that you brought up how the stigma is different when it's like a young boy with an older woman, where it's almost like in our cases it's like a badge of honor. Oh, we were able to
Exactly.
pull an older woman, versus
Yeah.
a girl with a grown man, and it's like we're gonna put you under the jail, and if you go to jail, you you're gonna face the repercussions, behind bars. So,
You got it.
like how do we change that narrative to where it's not okay for like a 12-year-old to be messing around with someone in their 30s, like a 12-year-old boy messing around with a 30-year-old woman, or vice versa.
We, yeah, we have to come to the realization that rape is rape, molestation is molestation, whether it's male with an older female or a young girl with an older male. It's all rape. It's all being touched inappropriately. So we have to view it all in the same bucket. We can't separate the two instances and say it's okay for the little boy to have sex with an older woman, but it's not okay for an older man to have sex with a young woman. It's all wrong. It's all against the law. It should be prosecuted the same. You know, Sometimes the women is not prosecuted as bad as the men are, but that needs to change as well. So laws, legislation, everything needs to be adapted to help us deal with this epidemic.
Hmm. All right, so you experienced the guilt, but then you in the book you're showing the forgiveness aspect, like moving towards forgiveness. Like, just talk about the steps it took for you to reach that point of forgiveness, and then what does forgiveness mean to you today?
I hated my mom until I wrote this book. I hated myself until I wrote this book. I was really, and I didn't really understand that there were scars that I haven't healed. So it's uh it's really important. Forgiveness is so important, and it's not important for the person who has done this to you. This is important for you to let go of that hate that you're holding for that person. You're forgiving it for your own personal gain. You don't have to forgive that person or say that you forgive or tell the person you forgive them, but in your heart, you have to have forgiveness, or the hate will eat at you for the rest of your life. It's very important in healing. Forgiveness and healing, that is going to go hand in hand. And as much as you may hate the idea of forgiving this person, that hate, that hatred in your heart, in your soul, is something that you need to alleviate. I felt such a burden lifted off me when I said to myself, and so I prayed to God and said, "Ma, I forgive you." I don't know if it was the drug that made her do what she did. I didn't know. My grandmother was schizophrenic. My mother was schizophrenic. I didn't know if it was mental issues that made her do what she did to me. I never got a chance to talk to her about it. But I know in my heart and in my mind and my soul, I had to forgive her no matter what the reasons were. Um, so, and then I try to express that forgiveness and that um these situations in my music. Because I got a song, Sins on My Mother, Faith in My Father, that I talk about my mother. You know what I mean? And talk about my father. And so again, forgiveness is just so important. And a lot of people just don't, they hold on to that hate. I've talked to people who wasn't even ready to read my book because they had went through the same thing. So their scars are deep. They can't even address it. Uh, you know, it happening to someone else, let alone address what happened to them.
Hmm.
So that and they dread going to family functions because they might see this person and so that forgiveness part is just so important in healing. It is, and that's another point that I want to try to get across to people when I go out to lecture and speak about it.
Right. What advice would you give to survivors who are afraid to confront their trauma?
You have to do it in your own time. No one can tell you when it's time for you to heal, but you have to acknowledge that these are issues that you need to work on. And then you find the way that you heal. A lot of people heal in different ways. I was able to do it through my belief in God and writing, and my music. Music may be something that you gravitate towards to heal. Writing, whatever it is that can allow you to heal your faith, um, that's what you should try to focus on and address your issues. And the main thing is, and the reason why some people don't want to address it within themselves because they're still being triggered by things in their life that brings them back to that moment. So in writing this book and in healing, I identified the triggers that I still have or still had that I needed to address. For instance, if I saw, you watch a movie and you see somebody using drugs. Well, if I saw someone about to shoot up drugs, that triggered me because my mother was a drug user. And at age 5, I witnessed her in the bathroom with a needle in her arm. So that has always been a trigger of mine. And even in my adulthood, I took my daughter to the doctor. She had to get an intravenous put in her arm, and I almost fainted watching the doctor stick this needle in her arm. So that was still a trigger of mine. So that's something I had to learn to address, and I did. I I I can now watch a movie if that happens. I don't have to turn my head away. I can face it, I can address it, and it doesn't trigger those memories to come back. And people have to understand that in order to heal, you're gonna have to address the trauma, and they're not ready to face that trauma again, because it will bring back those events. You will relive those events, and they're just not ready to face it as of yet. So they have to do it on their own time. And if I can, by reading my book and listening to my music, I can bring them to that decision a little quicker to address their issue, then again, my job is done.
Hmm. Rahman, what do you see when you look in a mirror?
That is a very good question because it was a time before I looked in the mirror. I mean, before I wrote this book, I looked in the mirror and I saw that little boy. I saw the pain that this little boy had went through. And one of the reasons why I started to write this book because I didn't like the holding on to that. I didn't like being able to look in the mirror and see that little boy that was traumatized. When I look in the mirror today, I see a proud man. I see a healed man, and I'm not totally healed. It's a process. It's a process that I will continue to grow and heal. But I can look at that mirror today and be proud of the person that's looking back at, and that means a lot.
Right. Powerful, powerful testimony.
Yes, sir.
Uh, what what's next for you? Do we have another book, more
Oh,
music, expanding
yes,
the
sir.
lectures worldwide? What's next for you?
All of that. My next book, I've already got the title and have an outline for it, and I just talked about it. It's called Triggers. Recognizing your triggers and dealing with those triggers, because that helps you to heal. You know, if you're not affected by, you know, and it goes with any type of abuse. It's not just with the sexual abuse that I face, but if it's physical abuse, you might have triggers if a guy raises his hand to you because you've been beaten before. You know what I mean? You have to recognize the things that trigger you into the trauma. So that's what I'm going to talk about in this book. And also the Uncle Johnny syndrome will be in the next book. You know, that we try to bring attention, and maybe I can convince families to start put these people in jail where they need to be, instead of perpetuating and condoning the behavior by just telling kids to stay away from that person. Something more.
Right.
And the lectures, like you said, the lectures, I want to lecture worldwide, all around the world. I want to be able to touch people and bring some healing and some peace to people of all colors, ages, and ethnicity.
So tell us where we can find you as far as one, purchasing scars or booking you for a lecture.
You can do that on my personal website, www.divinepublishingandapparel.com. You can purchase my music, you can purchase my book. I also design sportswear, so you can purchase my sportswear. Like this baseball jersey I have now is exactly an exact replica of my book cover.
Mm-hmm.
So I have this for sale on my website. I have t-shirts, I have hoodies, I have hats. So yeah, you can purchase my apparel. You can book me for a lecture, and you can purchase my music and book.
All right. Rahman Hall, author, Scars, Sins of My Mother, Faith of My Father, available now. Like I said, he has the 7-chapter soundtrack accompanying the book, and he's available for lectures. Just hit him up on divinepublishingandapparel.com. Brother, thank you for your story. Thank you for going out in the streets and spreading the good word, sharing a message of hope, survival, and empowerment and forgiveness, and tackling such a difficult subject that a lot of people try to steer away from. So continue to amplify this. And
I will, LeTroy, and thank you for having me. I appreciate you having me on, and hopefully we can do an update somewhere down the road and let you know my progress.
oh, without a doubt, yeah. Once you release Triggered, yeah, come back. Let's have another conversation. So yeah, for Stop, Look, and Listen, I'm your host, LeTroy Gardner. See you next week. Peace and blessings.